Let's look at some subject-verb agreement errors in improving sentence questions. No two of the specimens was sufficiently alike to warrant them being called members of a single species. Okay, so we read the sentence and we say, well, here's a verb, was. No two of the specimens was sufficiently alike. Well, what's the subject? Well, even if you thought it was specimens, you would say that there would be an issue because specimens is plural, was is singular. But the subject really is two. No two were sufficiently alike. So here we have a subject-verb disagreement. So let's go ahead, let's get rid of anything with was. So A, B, and C are off the table. Now we're down to two choices. And we find the one which works better and which doesn't introduce another error. So let's look at D. No two of the specimens were sufficiently alike to warrant the calling of them members of a single species. Okay, not terrible. Maybe this might change the meaning a bit, but let's look at E. No two of the specimens were sufficiently alike to warrant calling them members of a single species. Yeah, so this one, again, shorter, more to the point, doesn't introduce this weird ambiguity here. We would rather have E, which is shorter to the point, and also fixes the error. So the answer to number 5 is E. In the 19th century, reproductions of cathedrals or castles made entirely of ice was often a popular feature in North American winter carnivals. Okay, so again, we see this verb was. You might think ice is the subject, but again, no, it's not. What is a subject? It's reproductions of cathedrals or castles made entirely of ice. It's the reproductions that were often a popular feature. So let's go back and see which choices we can get rid of. So A, often was, D, or C. Often being popular features. One of the things we're going to talk about is being. Whenever you see being, almost always going to be wrong. So we can get rid of D here. There's no reason to change this to being, where you need to have a main verb here, were. Have been featured popularly. Now we're changing, not that so much the tense. I mean, it is a tense change, but not quite what we're looking for. So we can get rid of E. So the only one really left here is B. Often were popular features. Yeah, it switches the order of often and was, or often and were, but that's okay. It doesn't really change the sentence too much. And changes the subject-verb agreement, so 7 is definitely going to be B. All the talk about controlling noise, keeping rivers clean, and planting trees have not impressed people enough to be bringing about major changes in laws and lifestyles. So again, here's a subject or verb, have, which is plural. What is a subject? Well, the subject is the talk. All the talk about doing these things has not impressed people. So we need this to be has, needs to be singular. So A is gone, have, B is have, C is have. So let's look at D and E. All the talk about these things has not impressed people enough to bring about major changes in laws and lifestyles. Yeah. Has not made enough people impressed for bringing about major changes. Okay, so again, this one's wordy and long. D is shorter, more concise, doesn't have the issues that E would. So for that reason, E is off the table, and the best choice to this one is going to be choice D. A recently published history of comic books reveal that Batman was begun as an experiment, but became an institution. So let's see. A recently published history of comic books reveal. So here's another verb. This is plural. What is a subject? It's not comic books. It is a recently published history. This is the subject, and it's singular. So we need this to be reveals. So let's see. Reveal. So A is gone, of course. B changes its reveal, so that looks good. C changes the tense. There doesn't really seem to be any reason to change the tense. And if you read the rest of the choice, it's just a horrible mess. We get a fragment at the end. Or the whole sentence is a fragment. A recently published history of comic books revealed that Batman, who began as an experiment but became an institution, falls off, right? So changes the tense, also creates a new error, so we can get rid of C. D changes it to revealing, again, making a fragment. We want it to be reveals. And again, if you read it, it's just a horrible, wordy mess. How about E? History of comic books having been recently published, it reveals. So we get a comma splice here, a wordy, horrible mess. Doesn't really fix the error. The best choice here is going to be B because it fixes the error, and you're going to see it doesn't really hurt anything else. A recently published history of comic books reveals that Batman began as an experiment, but became an institution. Notice as well they changed this, was begun, because I guess we really only need began. We don't need this strange construction. So that's another thing that can be fixed. But again, the shortest choice, the choice that fixes the error, doesn't introduce a new one. It also doesn't really change more than it needs to in the sentence. The other three choices here just change a bunch of things that really don't need to be changed. 8. The time and place for such a large event is subject to approving from the mayor's office. So we got a couple issues here. So first, you might have seen this issue with approving. It's subject to approving from the mayor's office. That's a bit strange. It's unidiomatic. But also we have a subject-verb issue. The time and place for such a large event is subject. Well, what is the subject here? It's the time and the place. This is a compound subject, which is plural because it's two things. Therefore, this should be are. So let's see. A is off the table. For such a large event, the time and the place are subject to the mayor's office's approving them. Okay, horrible wordy mess. It does fixes the are, but we're going to squiggly that for now. That's just not a great choice, but we'll keep it. We'll see what happens. The time and the place for such a large event are subject to the approval of the mayor's office. So that's good, right? We change it to are, and we change approving to approval, to the approval, which is more idiomatic. So C looks pretty good. The time and place for such a large event are subject to be approved by the office of the mayor. Again, a bit wordy, especially in this part. Also, subject to be approved by. Again, a little unidiomatic. So we'll keep D. I think C is a better choice, though. How about E? Subject to the approval of the mayor's office are the time and place for such a large event taking place. Horrible, ugly, wordy mess. So the best choice here is going to be C. Fixes the error. Doesn't really make any major changes to the sentence that don't need to be made. So we're going to go with that one. At the Constitutional Convention of 1787, the proposal to replace the existing Articles of Confederation with a federal constitution were met with fierce opposition. So here we have were. The question is, what is the subject here? Well, the subject is not the Articles of Confederation or Constitution. It is the proposal. It was the proposal that was met with fierce opposition. So we need this to be at least was, or at least not to be plural. Were met with? No. Having been met with fierce opposition, that's awkward, wordy. Might even be a fragment. C, it met, well, this is a run-on. At the Constitutional Convention of 1787, the proposal to replace the existing Articles of Confederation with a federal constitution, it met with fierce opposition. It's a horrible mess. No way. How about D, met with? The proposal, blah, 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 met with fierce opposition. Sure. The proposal met their fierce opposition. That's strange. Where's the there coming from? What's the noun that's replacing? Not at all clear. So D is the best answer here. Now, it's not was, right? We don't have was, but it does just get rid of this and change it to met with, right? So it changes it to a singular, or I should say past tense, still singular, but nonetheless, past tense form of the verb. And that's all we need. So D is the answer. Last one, traditional Jamaican music, enriched with rock, jazz, and other modern rhythms from America, were the basis for reggae. So again, here's our verb. Notice it's separated from the subject with this comment off phrase, which we can essentially ignore. Because what was the basis for reggae? It was traditional Jamaican music, which is singular. This, therefore, must be singular, must be at least was. So were the basis for? No. Have, also plural? No. Become the basis of? Well, this is present tense. We need it to be past tense. Was the basis for? Yep. Past tense singular, what we're looking for. Being the basis of? Again, wherever we see being, not going to be a good choice 95% of the time, and also creates a fragment in this case. So D is the best answer because it fixes the error, doesn't make any other major changes. So that's going to be your answer. All right. So that is it for this section. Let's just look at one other quick example of subject-verb agreement.